Ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am. All right, then we have some students in the meeting now. So are you all ready to start the work? Yes? Right now they are, yes. Now we are meeting after some time. Okay. So, and actually speaking, I cannot remember any one of you, Tarani, Rauksana, and who is Zoom user? No name? Yeah, can you all hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So who is this Zoom user? May I know the name? Ilma. Right. Okay, fine. So, well, I'll share the slides and we'll see now what we have been discussing, right? During January, of course, now we have been talking about, well, give me 1 second, please. Okay, right. So hope you all can see the screen now. Well, so just to remind the stuff, now can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we are meeting after 1 month, I think, more than 1 month. So now I don't know whether you have a clear memory regarding what we have already started in this module and what we have discussed so far. But now today I am not going to repeat everything which I have discussed earlier. I will just remind the stuff, okay, so that it will be easy for you to catch what we are discussing during today's session. So the linguistic structure of modern linguistics, this is the module, and as I have already shown to you, now you all have this module with you all now, right? So you might have gone through the module, you might have read this module, and you may have got some idea regarding the content. So these are the contents which we are going to cover up in this module. 6 major areas are there. So we are starting with the first one, the nature of language and linguistics. Actually, I have already started the discussion on this first area, and I was actually halfway through it. Okay, and after that we are going to move on to the consonants and vowels. So before that, let me finish the discussion on the first area. So under the nature of language and linguistics, there were several areas, right? As you can see on screen now: fundamental beliefs about language, linguistic science, the rule-governed nature of language universals, innateness and creativity, and finally animal communication code. So these are the sub areas which should be clear to you, right? Which should be familiar and clear to you, right? So I have discussed the first 2 areas: fundamental beliefs about language and linguistic science. And as far as my memory is correct, I think I remember I should carry out from the 3rd area, the rule governed nature of language. Okay, I'll go to the place here. Because before this, we have been talking about the different types of signs: iconic, indexical, symbolic signs, all these things. And you have been doing some exercises also. Those who have been there in the lesson, in the lecture, would remember what I am telling now. Okay. So, right now, is that clear to all of you? I will be continuing from this point onwards. Is it all right?
Okay, madam.
Okay, right. Well, okay. Yes, now, till now, don't forget the fact that still we are talking about the nature of language, right? We are looking at what kind of a thing language is from different perspectives, from different angles. Now, from this slide onwards, we are going to look at language, right? from the point of view of its rule governed nature. Okay, now when we talk about any language, now here I'm not specific talking about Tamil or Sinhalese or English, French, Japanese, nothing, right? Language in common. Language as a common factor. Now, when we look at language, this particular feature is very obvious. The rule governed nature, right? What do you, now you need to understand what you mean by this rule governed nature. Which means simply to say, now we'll look at the points, right? But simply to access or to approach to this discussion, what do you mean by the rule governed nature of language? Is there anybody among you who would like to talk or tell anything about this word, rule governed nature? Any idea? The simple idea?
Ma'am, there should be some limitations when we are using language.
Limitations. What kind of limitations? What do you mean by it? Regarding
That
what?
means regarding the using proper words for the relevant opportunity, I mean like occasions, kind of.
Yeah, vocabulary. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, correct. Yeah. When we limitations are there, limitations or restrictions to say, right? So you have a point there. Good. Good observation. So now when we talk about language from this aspect, actually what we mean here, the language is governed by rules, by a set of rules. Language is governed here, controlled or manipulated by a set of rules, which we usually call as grammar rules, right? Now in Sinhala, we have the term Vyakarana Niti. That is what we here mean by grammar rules. So any language is controlled or governed by rules that is there. Right? So now in this slide, we are going to have a look at that aspect. Okay, how do we understand this particular rule governed nature that we can see in any language in the world? Right, so we look at the points here. Language signs occur in a system. Actually, now, as you all know, I have taken all these facts from the module, okay? From this the relevant module, which you already have with you. So therefore, don't think that I have added any new factors here or facts here. But while I'm discussing, I may be talking a lot more things than what you can see in the module. Right? So therefore, your concentration, listening and understanding everything is important. Well, so language signs occur in a system, right? But that is a common point, common fact. We say usually language is a system. That is the most important characteristic of language, right? Now, when we talk about language, there are so many characteristics now, which we can see in any language. A language is a system, and language is arbitrary, language is dual, productive, etc. Like that, there are so many features which we can see in any language. Among these features, this the first one is a very important one and major characteristic. What does it say? Language signs occur in a system. Right now, you know about signs. Already we have discussed about the signs, and there are several types of signs there in language. Iconic, symbolic, indexical, likewise. Right. So the point here is these signs, these linguistic signs occur in a system. Here the key word is system. This is the key word. Now, you know, system in Sinhala, we have the word paddhatiya, right? So we can call something a system if we can say something particular there. Well, we can't be telling everything system. No? We can't be calling everything we find systems. No, there has to be something, right? Specific in it for us to call it a system. Right, so that idea is here given within bracket. System means what then? collection of smaller units that function in connection to one another, right? So system is a kind of collection of several units, kind of collection, right? It's like this. So this whole thing is a system, right? Whole thing is the system, and inside this whole thing we have small things, small units, so smaller units. As you can see here, we have, for example, 5 different smaller units. So for us to identify this as a system, what should be there? These smaller units function in connection to one another, right? All these smaller units are related to each other or one another, right? They are not functioning in isolation. That is the point. They are connected to one another. So that's why I'm drawing arrows like this. Hope what I'm telling is clear to you, right? Okay. So all these smaller units are combined, interrelated. They function in connection to one another. So that is the nature of a system, right? Okay. So how do we apply this to language then? Because still I'm talking about this first point. Okay. So how can we apply this kind of a thing to language? Now, you know, language, for us to call language a system, we should identify the smaller units inside the language, right? So what are the smaller units that we can find out sorry, inside the language? Do you have any idea? If you know something, or if you can guess something, you can talk. Yeah, what kind of smaller units do we see in any language?
Ma'am, words and the meanings?
Yeah, words, that's one unit. Meaning is another unit. Fine.
Some punctuation marks?
No.
No,
I'll tell
nouns,
you.
verbs, adjective, adverbs.
Nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, prepositions, auxiliary, etc. All these are discussed in relation to grammar. Okay, right. So fine. Grammar is another unit. Okay, good. Anything else? You have missed one more important thing actually, the basic unit. The basic. Now, when we talk about language, don't forget the fact in linguistics, okay? Language, we are talking about the spoken aspect of language, not particularly the written aspect, right? So when we talk about the spoken aspect of language, primarily what do we need to communicate using a language? What do you think? What do we use to communicate? Yeah. When we talk about the spoken aspect, if we use language in writing, we need letters. And as one of you said, we need punctuation also, right?
Then signs.
Sounds, that's the thing.
Sign. No, sound.
Signs. Signs
Yes.
means,
Sound.
yeah, sound
Sound.
signals. Sound signals. So when we, now I emphasize the fact that in linguistics, we primarily think about the spoken aspect of language, right? So spoken aspect means what do we use as signs? The sounds. Sounds are our signals and they are the signs. So sounds consist in one unit inside a language, not only the sounds, right? Sounds in isolation we can analyze in a language, and we can, in the same language, we can analyze the sounds in combination. That means how we can pick several different sounds together and combine them and express some meaning. So sounds in isolation and in combination consist of one subsystem or one smaller unit. inside any language, right? Sound level. And after that, as you said, we have the word level also. Word level means the formation of words. So that is something bigger than sounds, no? Right? So we can form words by adding prefixes, suffixes to a root word, right? So this aspect is another different aspect inside a language, which you can see inside a language. So that is another smaller unit, right? And after the word formation, we have sentence formation, the phrase and sentence formation, the next bigger level. So there, we need to think about how to arrange words in a sentence grammatically correctly with meaning. Because we can't arrange words as we wish here and there. We always have to follow the sentence patterns. We need to cater to the subject verb agreement rule. There are more than other than that, there are more rules there. Right? So these rules are called grammar rules. Linguistically, we have the term syntactical rules. So this is another aspect, another unit inside the language, right? And finally, we have meaning. So words will not be useful. Phrases, sentences will not be useful even if they are grammatically correct, if they don't have any meaning. So meaning is totally another different, very important aspect inside the language, right? So that is another smaller unit or a subsystem. So when we talk about language, all these smaller units, they are independent right now. Sounds in isolation and combination, we call linguistically phonetics and phonology, and word formation, morphology, sentence formation, syntax, and meaning as semantics. So phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. These 5 units, okay? These 5 units are independent because they can function on their own, right? But at the same time, they are related to one another as well. They are related to one another because we can't talk about the word formation without talking about the combination of sounds. And we can't talk about the sentence formation without talking about the words. And nothing will be useful if there's no meaning. So you would understand all these 5 different levels are, or the smaller units are related to each other. Okay, connected to one another. So that is why now, if you can see my drawing here, these 5 smaller units, we can just call them phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, like that. Okay, so they are interrelated to each other then, and that is why we say language signs occur in a system. Is that clear to you? I'm really sorry now. Today I have a problem with my voice. I'll be coughing here and there, right? So sorry for the disturbances. Right. So there are further points here. These smaller units are organized on certain principles or rules. Now we'll come to the point because we are talking about the rule governed nature of language now, right? The rule governed nature. So we know now language functions as a system. That we know. And now at the same time we know inside language, these subunits or subsystems are interrelated to one another. How do they, how are they related? Or how are they interrelated to one another? It is not a messy thing, right? These smaller units are interrelated to one another or are organized on certain principles or rules. That is where we have grammar rules, right? When we talk about the word formation, there are grammar rules. When we talk about the sentence formation, there are grammar rules. When we talk about assigning meaning to words or sentences, again, there are semantic rules. And at the sound level also, there are phonological rules. So in all these smaller units, we can see these units are organized and interrelated based on certain principles or sets of rules. That is why we say language is rule governed. Okay. Am I making it clear to you all now? The rule governed nature of language? Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
Right. And when you talk about the rule governed nature, now some important key terms are there, right? This competence versus performance. These two keywords are very important. Grammatical competence we have, right? We have the long-term grammatical competence. So you need to be clear between the difference of this competence and performance. Two different words are there. So what is competence? Grammatical competence means underlying system of a language, which is a part of the internalized grammar of a speaker. Right now, you just think about yourselves. Right? You have the competence in relation to your mother tongue or maybe your second language, right? Whatever language, you have the competence as well as the performance. Try to relate this to yourself, then you can easily understand. So what do you mean by competence? You may be telling, okay, I am very much competent in English. You may be telling like that. Or you can just point out somebody and say, okay, he is very competent in English. What do you mean by that? Competent means, the simple meaning is ability. Right? Ability or the knowledge, having the knowledge of the language. That is the competence. Right? And grammatical competence is a little bit more than that. It's a broader term. Grammatical competence means underlying system of a language, right? Which is a part of the internalized grammar of a speaker. Now, just think about yourself again. You have learned, for example, in relation to the English language, you have learned your English language. You know the grammatical rules of the English language. They are stored in your mind, right? They are stored. The English grammar rules are stored in your mind. They have become internalized in you. So you have the knowledge and you have the ability to use these grammar rules and produce sentences. You have the ability, and that is what you mean by grammatical competence. Grammatical competence. Okay, right. And we say grammatical competence is complete and perfect. Right now, just think, we are teaching to the students tenses. Active voice, 12 tenses we teach. For example, I am telling you example situation. So they learn these 12 tenses, right? And the teacher teaches all the sorts of the formation of affirmative forms, negative structures, interrogative structures, and negative interrogative structures in relation to the 12 different active voice tenses, sentences. So the student has learned all these things and they are there. The knowledge is there with the student, right? And then the teacher asks, the students to deliver a speech, right? Impromptu speech. Maybe using a simple present tense and the simple past tense, for example. I mean, we can't deliver speeches using all the 12 tenses, no, right? We're taking one or two to deliver a speech. Now, what do you think will happen? As you think, will there be a possibility for mistakes or not? Is there a possibility for mistakes or not? Yes. By the way, do you hear me?
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you? Yeah, because it doesn't indicate in my screen that my mic, I don't know whether my mic is working or not. Anyway, you all can hear me, right? Okay, fine. So what do you think? Even after learning something, right? Even after learning something theoretical, do you think whether there is a possibility for the learner to do any mistakes or not? Practically, yes or no? Any idea? I don't know whether what I am asking is clear to you. If it is not clear, please let me know. Okay, right. So it's like this, okay? Even after having knowledge, after having been learned about the grammar, the set of grammar rules, right? Still, there is a possibility for the learner to do some mistakes or maybe some errors even. That is the idea. Now, because we can't expect the learner to be producing all the time what is there in internalized within him practically due to so many different practical reasons. Maybe because of the environmental reasons, maybe because of the forgetfulness, right? The tension, excitement, fear, anxiety, so etc. Due to a lot more reasons like this, there will be interruptions in the performance. So always competence and performance are not the same. Okay, competence and performance are not the same. Now, although according to our example, the teacher has taught the student all the 12 different tenses, right? When the teacher asks the students to do, to deliver a speech using one or two tenses, and when the students are talking, using the tense knowledge, right? They have acquired, there will be some mistakes. So we can expect, and that's natural. So competence is the internalized knowledge, the internalized grammar, whereas performance is how the learner produces the language. So always these two do not tally. So we know grammatical competence is complete and perfect, right? But performance may be incomplete and imperfect due to depending on so many practical reasons. Now, can I know whether you got the point of competence and performance? Yeah. The difference between competence and performance? Tarani, can you all hear me?
Ma'am, there's a small problem with my phone. Now can clearly hear.
Earlier, what happened? So I'm also not sure whether you heard me. That's why I'm asking over and over again.
Yeah,
Uh,
now
Ramsa,
okay.
No, ma'am. Now we can hear. We can hear.
now he said, how long you didn't hear me?
No.
Huh?
We heard. We heard. No problem.
Okay, okay. So in case you start not hearing me, please let me know, okay? Right?
Okay, ma'am.
Because on my in my laptop on my screen it doesn't indicate properly. That is why I have a doubt whether you hear me or not. So just let me know. Right.
Okay.
Okay then. So what about this competence versus performance thing? Is that clear to you all?
Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you explain it again?
My goodness. From where?
I'm really sorry. I think there's
No.
a
From the
problem
beginning.
at my end. No, just that 2 words, ma'am. That's enough. I will
Okay,
go
okay.
through.
All right. Okay, sure. So here actually the brief idea is competence is the knowledge, right? Or in other words, the internalized grammatical knowledge a person has. A speaker or a learner or a person who is using a particular language can have the, the knowledge, actually the word is knowledge of that language. And that knowledge is internalized in the mind, right?
Okay.
So that is competence. And I tried to draw parallel it with the situation where the teacher is teaching the tenses to the students in the classroom. The teacher is teaching all the 12 tenses and to the students, and they learn them very well. Right now, in their minds, they have the knowledge. But when we think about practicing means using language. Using language with that knowledge, there will be some loops here and there, right? It's like this, when that after the teacher has taught the students these the tenses, right? The teacher can ask the students to talk in English using 1 or 2 tenses. But when the students are doing it, when the students start talking, there may be certain mistakes and even errors occurring here and there. So that is their performance. So always the point is competence is not equal to performance. Performance is the production part of language, whereas competence is the knowledge, the grammatical knowledge that is internalized within the mind of the learner. These two do not tally all the time, and that is kind of problem. And that is why here we say competency is of always it's complete and perfect. Now, simply you can remember competence as your note, right? Now, note in the sense now usually students are very keen on maintaining very clear and nice notes now with different colors, right? For the title, one color, and highlighting when and where necessary, rounding, circling, doing a lot of things and maintaining nicely and beautifully the notes. So competence is that kind of thing. It's very complete and perfect. But the production, performance, using language either orally or in writing may not be that much perfect or may not be that much complete. There are certain mistakes due to so many practical reasons. Okay, right. That is what I was telling regarding competence and performance here. Right. Now here the rules of language act as a kind of constraint. Actually, I was talking about this very briefly the last time I met you. Never mind, I'll go through this again. The rules of language act as a kind of constraint on what is possible in a language. Right. Now you told me, Tharani, I think, right? You told the rule govern nature means the limitations. Yeah, you have very good point there actually. Because of these rules, there are constraints, or in other words, restrictions. We restrict the language in so many ways because of these rules that happens. So we can see here, there's a long example with so many parts in it. So hope you can follow the idea. Right? So in the area of syntax, syntax means the word form, sorry, sentence formation. The rules of English permit I like soap operas, or soap operas I like, right? When we talk about the syntactic rules or grammar rules in the English language, these two expressions are okay. They are permitted. I like soap operas, or even soap operas I like, right? No issue. Both are okay, right? They are permitted. But like soap operas I is not permitted. If you happen to produce a sentence like this, definitely it will be observed as ungrammatical, therefore wrong. Not permitted. It is not that. This kind of expression is never permitted in the syntactic rules of the language, right? So we can't produce sentences as we wish. That is why here we say constraint. The rules of language as a kind of constraint on what is possible. Right. Now, when we talk about the word formation, that means morphology, overnight is a possible verb expressing a length of time, right? Overnight can be used as a verb, like the climbers overnighted on a rock ledge. So overnighted is used in the past tense. Overnighted can be used just to talk about the length of time, right? With the meaning length of time. Okay, right. And the problem is midnight. Now, midnight is also a word like somewhat like overnight now, right? But since it expresses a point in time, it cannot be used as a verb. As in the revelers midnighted in the streets, can we say? No, that is wrong. Okay, right? So overnight can be used as a verb because it talks about the length of time, but midnight cannot be used as a verb because it talks about a point in time, right? So that is in when we talk about the vocabulary, right? When we talk about the sound level, the phonological rules, right? The phonological rules of English would permit the word crack, right? Crack, although it does not exist, but would not generate the word sub. Now, we can't even pronounce this, right? We can't pronounce this. This kind of combination of sounds is not allowed, not practical or ungrammatical, whereas this kind of combination of sounds is okay, although we don't have it, right? It's a different story, but still we can pronounce this. We can say crack or something, but just like that, we can't pronounce this one. So there's a limitation there. Furthermore, when we talk about the morphological rules, if prac were a verb, the past tense would be pract, pronounced with the final t sound, not the d or ed sound that is found in other past tense forms. And if prac were a noun, the plural would be praxis, pronounced with the final is sound, not sound that is found in other plural forms. So like right now, hope you can please read these things. These examples are available in the module as well, right? So what we are trying to here understand is that in relation to this particular example, when we want to make the past tense, right? Usually, when you think about the pronunciation, okay, past tense is pronounced, the end sound is pronounced as t as well as d, right? The, and in certain rare situations, id also, id, like this. It's like this, okay? So there's no unique rule saying that if you pronounce the past tense, you should always end the word in the sound. No. There is the t sound and there is the id sound as well, right? Okay. And also, when you think about the pluralization of nouns using the same root word here, the example continues, right? If you think about presses, it is pronounced with final is sound, not sir or z, right? So when you talk about the plural formations, the final s can be seen, or z can be seen, or is can be seen, presses, like that. So there are restrictions. We can't use the where we should use the or id, vice versa. And we can't use is where we should use or z, right? There are rules behind these incidents. And that is now, I'm not going to actually in detail here at this point. I'm just showing you the nature of this language, right? The nature of especially the rule governed nature of language in relation to these linguistic aspects. Okay, right? So hope I am clear to you so far. Right, now we will be moving on to another area. Language universals, innateness and creativity. Right, so this is actually a somewhat clear and very simple area. Only thing is you need to be very much familiar with these terms. Okay, there are some words, terms, terminology. So you have to be very much familiar. Now, if you are not using the relevant terms, when you produce answers, however much the content of your answer is good, it will not be valuable, right? That's it. You need to show your knowledge, your familiarity with the key terms, so that you need to learn these key terms and be familiar with them, so that you can make your writings worthwhile, right? Okay, so now we'll talk about the language universals. So what are the language universals? They are the features of language which are not language specific. Right, now you can guess simply the word universal. Universal means common, right? Something common, not particular. So what do you mean by language universals? They are the features of language, particular features of language which are not language specific, right? And language universals are common to all the languages in general in the world. That is the idea here, right? So language universals do not change from in between, we'll say, let's say Sinhala and Tamil, right? No. Or Sinhala and English? No. From language to language, language universals do not change. We can say language universals common to any language in general, at the general level, not in the specific level. Okay, that is the idea here. And when we talk about language universals, we need to be familiar with these two terms, principles and parameters, very important terms. Principles, parameters. So the shared elements of language are referred to as their principles, shared elements of language, right? And the differences that are displayed in their syntax are known as their parameters. So do you get any idea by reading these two lines? The shared elements of language means the elements or the features that you can see in common, right? They are principles of language, something at the general level, something in common, right? They are the principles. Whereas parameters are very specific. So the differences that are displayed in their syntax means the grammar of language, right, are known as the parameters. So Sinhala language has its own set of grammar rules, right? And English language has its own set of grammar rules, and Tamil too has its own set of grammar rules. So each and every language in this world has its own sets of grammar rules. So they are the particular parameters. So Sinhala grammar is totally different from the English grammar. So there are differences between Sinhala syntax or Sinhala grammar and the English syntax. So these differences are referred to as parameters. Okay. So principle is the common thing, whereas the parameters is the language specific thing. Okay, right now we have some examples also. Look at this. In the syntax of all languages, a sentence has a subject. Right, now in the syntax of all languages. Now what do you think? All the languages in the world definitely have subject. A sentence has a subject, right? Now, wherever in whatever language we use a sentence, there has to be a subject. That is not a parameter, that's a principle. Right? Principle means this commonly shared feature, the common thing, principle. But see how the use of this subject changes from language to language. Continue this, however, not all languages express this language universal in the same way. Now, although sentence has a subject, right? In some languages like English and German, the subject must be overtly expressed. The subject, we can see the existence of the subject is clearly visible. We can see it in the languages like English and German, right? But in the languages like Japanese and Chinese, the subject is generally omitted, right? The subject is omitted. They are not using the subject. And also there's another way of different use, like in the languages like Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. What is happening? Pronoun subjects tend to be omitted. Pronoun subjects, not the other subjects. When they use pronoun as a subject, they tend to omit it. Now, can you see 3 different ways of using the subject in a sentence are given here in this para? Hope you can clearly see, right? Overtly using the subject and omitting the subject, and pronoun subjects are being omitted, right? Like that. So you have an example for comparing English. In English, see how we can write sentences. Lily is going to the beach, right? We can say, in English, Lily is going to the beach. So Lily is the subject. And we can say it like she's going to the beach also. We can replace Lily by she, the pronoun. No issue, no problem. Still the sentence is grammatically correct and meaningful, right? That's fine. But can we say in English, going to the beach? This one. Can we say in English without the subject? Yes. Any idea? Can we say without the
Can't, no,
subject?
can't, because the structure should be subject, verb, object. That's why
That's the thing. So if we omit the subject, there will be a grammar violation.
yeah,
Right?
that's why we can't use.
We can't use this sort of
Yes.
pattern in English.
Yes.
So this pattern is wrong. Okay, so actually I wanted you all to just think about this, right? And get the idea to the mind, and that's why I'm giving you time to think and talk all, right? And look at German. I have extracted this example from the module, right? You will find this there. Lily gets some strand, right? That's the idea. So you can find the subject there, right? And she gets some strand, subject still available. So these are okay, right? these expressions are okay. Okay in the sense accepted. And get some strand without the subject. That is also problematic. So just like in English, in German also, without the subject, the sentence is considered to be ungrammatical, right? It is not accepted. Now look at Spanish. In Spanish, Lili Vala Playa, that kind of expression is there. No? So you can find Lili, subject is there, so that is fine. Ela Vala Playa. So there are also, this kind of expression is also fine. And look at the third expression, Vala Playa. Where is the subject? Do you find any subject in the third expression in Spanish? No subject, but still that is also accepted. They can say, right? So now actually you need to understand the difference between the two terms, principal and parameter. That is what we are trying to clear out here. Okay. So principal is the commonly seen or observed feature. So according to this example, the principal is the subject, because in this world, any language, when we talk about any language, the sentence should have a subject. A sentence has a subject. So that is the principal. But how we use, how the different speakers of different languages use the subject is actually different from one another. And that is their parameters. So this parameter specifies whether in a given language, the subject can be omitted or not. Right? According to this parameter, what do we say? In a given language, can we omit the subject or not? So in relation to English and German, we can't omit the subject. And in relation to Spanish, we can omit the subject. That is, so when we say so, what do we say? We are talking about the parameters of English, German, and Spanish. Okay, right. Hope I'm clear enough for you to catch the idea. And universal grammar includes both principles and parameters, right? Universal grammar, when we talk about UG in simple terms, universal grammar means UG. It includes both aspects, principles as well as parameters, which together explain the features that all languages share and the syntactic differences which make each language unique. So when we talk about in UG about the principles, we talk about the common features, the features that are shared by all the languages in common principles. And at the same time, we pay attention to the parameters. Parameters are what then? The syntactic or the grammatical differences, which make each language different from one another or unique. Why do we say Sinhala is different from English? Is it because of the principles or parameters? I have a question now. Why do we say Sinhala is different from English language? You know, Sinhala and English are different, no? So is it because of the principles or parameters? Because of the parameters, not the principles. At the principal level, we talk about the commonly shared features. But at the parameters level, we talk about the specific features of languages. Okay, right. Well, so now you have a small work now. Actually, only few students are there, but I think not only you, even the others in the batch would listen to the recording. So therefore, I give you some time, right? With small time to attempt this question. After that, we'll look at how to resolve this, right? Now, the question is, look at the following statements. Decide whether they represent principles or parameters. So principles, within brackets, the idea is given here also. Universal features of languages in general, right? And parameters means the differences in the syntax of specific languages. Right. So you need to decide whether these statements, what is there even in these statements, represent principles or parameters. I don't think you don't have this question in the module, right? So you can take a screenshot or a photo. Don't start writing everything. It takes time, right? So you can either just read on screen and take a separate sheet and write down the answers, principal or parameter. Only one from both options, right? There are several statements there. So I'll give you around 5 to 7 minutes. Please, all of you, I need you all to do this now. Right, okay, fine. So I think the time is enough for you to get some idea about these statements. So is there anybody who would like to tell anything about these statements, whether they are principles or parameters? First one, in statements, the subject precedes the verb. In statements, the subject precedes the verb. Is it a parameter or is it a principle? I mean, does this change depending on the particular language? Or is it common in all among all the languages in the world? How do you think? Is there anybody who would like to talk among you?
Ma'am, can this be
It's
a
a
parameter?
parameter.
Yes, that's right. That's the parameter. Fine, good. Because this can change from language to language. That's why, right? Okay. Second one, there are question words that request information about who, what, when, etc. There are question words. And the role of question words is to request information in relation to who, what, when, etc. What do you think? Is it a parameter or a principle?
It's a principle.
That is a principle. Fine. Yes. See, there exists a system for negation. System. There exists a system. Now you know what about negation, right? Denying something, telling no. That is what you mean by negation in one word. So, system exists to indicate no or negation. That system can vary from language to language, but this statement says there exists a system for negation. So what about it?
Parameter.
Parameter.
Is that a parameter or principle?
I think that is principle, ma'am.
That is a principle, right? Now, how that system varies can depend on the nature of the language, but system is there throughout the languages in the world, right? So that's a principle. Next one, questions are formed by inverting the subject and verb. Questions are formed by inverting the subject. Now, you know what inverting means, right? Subject. Now, in an affirmative sentence, we start with the subject and the verb and object or whatever comes next. But when we form the questions or interrogative formation, in English language, what does happen? There is the inversion. The verb, the auxiliary verb comes first before the subject. The auxiliary is shifted to the front of the sentence. Right? So that is what you mean by inversion. So what do you think about this statement?
Parameter?
That's a parameter. Yes. And E, a sentence contains a subject, though it may not be overtly expressed. A sentence contains a subject, though it may not be overtly expressed. It may be overtly expressed or may not be overtly expressed, but a sentence contains a subject. That is the very example we discussed in the previous slide. Is it a principle or parameter?
Ma'am, can that sentence have both features?
Yeah, but try to understand the major idea of this sentence. The main
It will be
clause.
parameter.
Parameter.
You have quote from the clause end. That's why. Get the main idea of the sentence. Though it may not be overtly expressed or whatever, the main idea is a sentence contains a subject. This is the idea.
It's a principle.
Yeah, this is what I want to tell you.
Mm.
So, this is a principle. Right. Adjectives precede the noun that they modify. If adjectives precede the noun that they modify. Precede means occur before, right? So, in English itself, Adjectives precede the noun that they modify, as well as adjectives follow the noun also, right? So, is it a principle or a parameter?
Principal.
But it is grammatical thing, no, ma'am. Can be parameter.
It's a parameter. It's a parameter, right? So it's not a commonly shared feature among all the languages that always adjectives should precede the noun. Now, the principle can be adjectives are used to modify noun, whatever the language is. That's the principle. But this particular F, the statement F is a parameter, right? And the basic word order of a sentence is SUVO. SUVO means subject, verb, object. G. What do you think?
The basic
Subject,
word
verb,
is
object.
the
Parameter, principle. Yeah.
principle.
Mhm. Do you find this word order in any language? In all the languages? SVO?
No.
What do you think about Sinhala or Tamil? You find the same? No, this is specific to English only.
Yeah.
That can be parameter then.
The parameter,
Yeah.
right? The parameter, right? So next one, in statements, the subject must be overtly expressed. In statements, the subject must be, this is the main idea, overtly expressed. Do we find the same thing in all the languages?
No.
Which means this is a what? Parameter. Parameter, not a principle, right? Principle means always remember so something common, the general thing. And the next one, tense is indicated by adverbials. Tense is indicated by adverbials, like for example, just think about the sentence like this. I put the note on the table yesterday. Something like that. I put the note on the table yesterday. So how do you know that the sentence belongs to the past tense?
By yesterday.
Because of yesterday, no? Right? Because the verb is no change. There's no change in the verb. Right?
Yeah,
So
it's a principle.
Are you sure? Now, the tense is indicated by adverbials in the English language, right? Now, my sentence is from English. I gave you an English sentence. But that may not be the same in all the other languages. Do you think tense is indicated by adverbials in Sinhala? What about Tamil? Now, in Sinhala, we have past form, past tense verbs, right? Mama, iye giya, went, right? So even without iye, mama giya thing, right? That is that belongs to the past tense. No need of adverbials. So what do you think about this statement?
It's a parameter.
Parameter, right? It's a parameter, right? Nouns refer to people, places, or things. Yeah, J, this one. It's very clear. Nouns refer.
Principle.
That is a principle. Fine. Yes. And the last one, there is a means of expressing number. There is a means of expressing number. Yeah.
Principle.
That is a principle. Fine. Good. And what kind of means are there to express number can vary. Okay. That can vary depending on the particular language. But there is a means of expressing numbers. So that's the principle. Okay then, right? So I'm really happy that you all have actively done the work, which means you have got some idea. Am I correct? Regarding the principle and parameters difference?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
fine. So nice. And these are the answers. You have done it, right? So no need of showing this. Okay, so we'll move on to the next point. Language is innate. This is another feature of language. Now, don't forget that still we are talking about the the nature of language, okay? Nature of language from different perspectives we are looking at. Now we are looking at language as innate. This is a very important, another important characteristic. Language is innate. So you need to understand what you mean by this. Please refer to the module, right? Although I'm not telling it all the time, you need to refer to the module, read the module for further information, more information. And what I am telling you may be what's not available in the module also, but you need to follow the module, right? So people are born with an inborn capacity for language acquisition and are genetically equipped to learn a language. Not a specific language, but human language in general. And this we call LAD. LAD is the short term. It stands for Language Acquisition Device. This is founded by Chomsky, very famous linguist, right? Chomsky. But you need to understand what LAD means here. What do you mean by LAD? That is Language Acquisition Device. Right, now I have a question for you. Now when an infant is born, when a baby girl or a boy is born, is he or she coming to this world with a language or without a language? With or without? You have any clear idea?
With.
With. Right. So, which means when a baby is born to Sinhala parents, right? Sinhala parents in the sense born to a mother and a father whose mother tongue is Sinhala, right? That is what I meant by Sinhala parent. Yeah. Okay. Then you mean that baby is coming to the world with the Sinhala language? Is that what you are telling?
Ma'am, like when the baby is in the womb, even after like 3 months, the baby can hear.
Okay.
The parents are talking and
Yeah.
the things are happening outside. Most probably that baby can grab.
Uh-huh. So
So
you mean if the parents are talking in Sinhala, the baby has a tendency to understand or maybe to respond to the Sinhala language? Is that what you are trying to tell? Or the baby comes with Sinhala language?
no, actually, ma'am, I mean that the baby can grab the language very easily, but it may be kind of a similarities when he's learning those things because of that initial stage incident.
Yeah, there's a very good, interesting point there. But actually, what's happening, according to Chomsky, right, is no person comes to this world with a language. That's the thing, right? No one comes to this, no one is born with a language. Then what then? Now, after a baby comes to this world, after a baby is born, right, by 1 year, the baby starts, or maybe less than that, right? The baby starts to talk now. Yeah. That capacity the baby develops because of the interaction with the environment, with the parents, with the adults, whoever near him or her, right? With that exposure, the baby starts using a language when he or she is almost 1 year old, 1.5 years old. Like that is what is naturally happening. But here the question is, at the start, that means at the birth, is the baby coming with a language? The answer is no. Right? The baby is not born with a language, but still the baby is born with one thing. What is that? LAD. The baby is born with LAD. LAD means language acquisition device, which means the ability to learn and acquire a language. So always, that's a very clear and proven point. Okay, no person is born to this world with a language, but the person is born to this world with an ability to acquire a language. we can clearly get this. Now, if a baby is born to Sinhala parents in Sri Lanka, right? Soon after the birth, maybe say after 1 or 2 days, maybe 1 or 2 months even, right? The baby is taken to America, we'll say, right? The baby is adopted by American parents. Then what do you think? If the baby has come with Sinhala language, that is impossible. No, because by the time the baby starts talking, what is the language then? If the baby has gone to America, the baby who is born to Sinhala parents in Sri Lanka has gone to America during the infancy. So what is the language the baby starts to talk?
English.
English automatically, right? So that is why do you think that happens? Because the baby is not born with language, but born with an ability to acquire language. What language does the baby acquire then? The language the baby is receiving from the environment. From the environment. And environment includes the exposure, the who is talking, who is responding, the parents, the elders, everybody. Right? So any person can acquire language. Any person can acquire and genetically equipped, right? That is the point here. People are born with an inborn capacity for language acquisition and are genetically equipped to learn a language. But we are not talking about learn a specific language, right? It's not like that a baby is coming to this world with the ability to learn Sinhala only, or with an ability to learn English only, nothing like that. With an ability to learn any language. Depending on the environment after the birth, that language will be decided. And that can be done because of the availability of land, as introduced by Chomsky there. Okay, so that is why we say language is innate. This is the point. Don't mistake this as language, the baby is coming with the language. No, that's a wrong conception. Okay, language is innate means ability to learn a language is there at the birth, from the birth itself. Right. A child acquiring a language is innately equipped with both principles and parameters. Okay. A child acquiring a language is innately equipped with both these principles and parameters, but the parameters become set as language learning progresses. So both aspects are there within the child. Aspects are there in the sense the child is equipped with both aspects. The child has the ability of principles as well as parameters, but when with the time being, when the child is, when the baby is growing, okay, what happens is that these parameters become fixed, become set as language learning progresses. It is the parameters that are being polished and developed within the baby. Then that is what we say, the baby is learning language or the baby is acquiring language. What do you mean? The baby is taking parameters and fixing them, fixing the parameters of a specific language in his or her mind. That is what we mean by then baba හොඳට කියන්න දන්නවා මේක දන්නවා එයා කතා කරන්න දන්නවා එයා මේක කියනවා අරක කියනවා. You have seen, no? You might have heard the parents are telling. So that is what is happening, right? The baby is getting familiar to the parameters of his mother tongue. Okay, so this is the idea behind language is innate. Don't forget the term lad. This is very important when we talk about the innateness of language. Right. And there's another aspect of language which we call creativity. You say language is creative. Okay. So you need to understand what we mean by creative here. And creativity in language has two aspects there, right? Human beings can produce and understand novel sentences and new words. right? Novel sentences and words or new words. Novel means, new. Novel means new. So the idea is human beings can create or produce, even understand new sentences. Even they can create new words also. That's a very clear aspect in language, right? Okay. And also, human beings can create sentences of infinite length. The length can be infinite theoretically, right? Although there are obviously practical limits on length. So now the two features are the novelty, the novelty in the production of sentences, and the other feature is the infinite length. Because of these two features, we say language is creative. But you don't have to misunderstand this infinite length. And now, theoretically, we can say we human beings can create lengthy, very much long utterances. Long utterances. Theoretically, we can do so, but there are some practical limitations, right? Especially when it comes to understanding, it will be really difficult. Although we can create long sentences, it may not be that much practical to understand them. Just look at this nursery rhyme given here. This is the dog that worried the cat, that killed the rat, that ate the mole, that lay in the house that Jack built. So if you want, you can add more clauses beginning with that and make this elasticize, right? This can be whatever long as you wish. But the thing is, there's a practical problem in understanding and not convenient. Other than that, still the human beings can create long utterances. That's the point. So language is creative is that. Having the ability to produce new sentences and long sentences. And there are limitations. You need to understand that, right? When we talk about this creativity, now let's talk about the English language. In English, the vocabulary is somewhat limited. It's true that open word class is unlimited in number, whereas the closed word class is limited in number. But as a whole, when we talk about the English vocabulary, the words are not that much unlimited, right? The vocabulary is somewhat limited. And also, when you think about the rules, the grammar rules in English, are they limited or unlimited? What do you think? English grammar rules, limited or unlimited? Yes. English grammar rules are limited in number, right? We don't have unlimited number of grammar rules. They are finite. So when we talk about the English language, in one hand, we have limited grammar. So, yes, we have limited grammar rules. On the other hand, we have limited vocabulary. So these are limited resources. But still, using these limited resources, we can produce unlimited number of sentences. Can you count the number of utterances or sentences you can produce in the English language? Count and say, okay, this is the number. Never. We can never say. So that is why we say creativity of language means producing unlimited novel sentences that are infinite in length using limited resources like vocabulary and grammar. Okay. right? So hope you got the idea now that limited resources, that point is not there in the slide. That's something I have added to the discussion so that you can easily understand the real nature of language. Okay. All right. So then we all move on to the next discussion. Animal communication codes. I think there are certain things which are available for us to look at here under animal communication codes. Now, so far we have been talking about the language, human language, okay? The language used by the human being. So there we were talking about the rule governed nature of language, and the language is innate and language is creative. All these features can be seen in the human language, right? So far we have been talking about that. And here you need to pay your attention to the animal language. Of course, we don't say animal language, animal communication system or animal communication codes. That is the proper term, of course, because we can't use the word language to introduce their communication systems. As animals' communication system is totally different from human communication system. So here you have some points regarding the features of animal communication system or codes, right? So we'll look at them and you have to see how they are different from human language. Okay, right. Most animal languages are indexical and stimulus bound, depending on the necessary presence of concrete stimuli, right? The point may be a little bit long, but it's very clear. Idea is simple. What do you understand by this? If you are listening, is there anybody who would like to say in simple terms what you understand by this first point? Yes. Any idea? Yes.
Ma'am, it can be the meaning of the some response to the relevant stimulus from the.
Yes. Most animal languages are indexical. Now, hope you still remember the signs. We have been talking about indexical signs, symbolic signs, and iconic signs, right? Indexical means when you point out something, right? So you can refer back to the note, please, and refresh your memory. And stimulus bound. Stimulus bound. So always animals are responding to stimulus or stimuli. In Sinhala, we have the word, what do you have the word for stimuli? Right? So you have to stimulate. Then only they respond. I mean, even I'm not talking about the communication between a human being and animal, right? Communication among animals we talk here. Communication among animals, they are stimulus bound. Because for an animal to communicate, it has to be roused by the stimulus, by any stimulus from the environment. That's why we say their communication is stimulus bound, depending on the necessary presence of concrete stimuli. So there has to be a concrete stimuli. There has to have a stimuli. Then they would respond to that, right? So now what do you think now? Why your indoor animals are there, no? Right? Cats. When does a cat talk? A simple question. If you have cats in your home, you know. When does a cat talk?
When they see food and something.
Yeah, when they see food, when they hear tin opener or whatever, something, when they feel hungry. So they are the stimulus. They are the concrete stimuli. So then they respond. That's a very simple example. I hope you can understand what I mean here in the first point. It's always animal communication is based on stimulus response. Stimulus response. So the term stimulus bound communication, right? Their language is stimulus bound. Okay, this is a very good and very important point to talk about animal communication systems. And the next one, the topic of conversation must be present in the immediate environment. It cannot be displaced in time or space. Actually, now don't misunderstand here. The animals have the topics of conversation, they are having conversation, nothing like that. But when the animals are communicating, right, you can very carefully observe this. Their communication is limited to the present time only and to the immediate environment only, unlike the human beings. Right now, when we people are meeting, can you understand what kind of things we can talk? We can talk what may be happening in America now, right? And we can talk what may be happening in another planet. So the topic of our conversation, our here means the human beings. Conversation is not limited to the immediate environment. We can talk about the things in the immediate environment as well as whatever the things in remote environment as well. Right? Okay. And also when human beings are communicating, they can talk about the past. Not only the present, they can talk about the future as well. Right now, yesterday I had a sound sleep. Right now, last year I was a student, and the next year I will be receiving teaching appointment, like that, for example. Humans can talk about their past, present, as well as future. But what do you think about the animals? When the two animals meet, do you think they are talking about their past? And they are talking about what will happen in their future? Because of the deforestation and all these things? Never. So very big difference, and a unique characteristic of animal communication system is this second point, right? Their communication is limited to the present time and immediate environment. So it cannot be displaced in time or space, whereas human communication is displaced in time and space. Okay, right. And animal communication systems are iconic and natural, but not symbolic. Iconic, natural, not symbolic. So they do not use signs that are symbols, that are symbolic. They do not want to, of course, they are using direct signs, iconic signs. You know what iconic signs are, right? And the opposite of iconic is actually symbolic, because what you don't mean what you show actually. What you say or what you show may mean something different. That is what you mean by symbolic, no? Okay. But human beings are using symbolic signs, but animals are not like that. Their communication, their sounds, the sound signals they produce are not symbolic, right? And codes are finite, not infinite or creative. So in animal languages, in animal communication systems, their codes are finite. Here finite means limited, right? Limited. That's the idea, finite, not infinite or creative. Now, infinite and creative codes are available in human language. Okay, but in animal language, it's a very limited set of signals or signs are used by the animals. And there's a closed repertoire of utterances, very close repertoire, not open to changes, right? Fixed number of signs. That's the idea. And next one, the codes are acquired exclusively through genetic transmission, not learned, unlike the humans. Now, when you think about the human beings, we can learn languages now. We can learn and we can acquire languages. With the time being, when we grow up, right, we have that ability. But what do you think about the animals? They acquire their signals only from their genes. Genetic transmission, their signals, their signs are coming only from genetic transmission, right? Coming through, acquired through genetic transmission only. Otherwise, we can't expect, we don't see them to be learning any signs. Learning means taking something new, okay? Learning or getting something new from the outside. That is learning. So what do you mean by you are learning English? You learn something new now, a new language. But animals, they don't learn. They don't take anything new from outside. Whatever they are producing, right? Whatever they are producing are inside them. They have already come in their genes. They are in their genes. That's all. So out of genes, they can't work. Right? Do you catch my idea? So this genetic transmission is very important point. All are important when we talk about the animal communication codes. But this is a remarkable point. Okay, right. So here, followings are not possible within animal communication codes. Not possible. See, using language to refer to abstractions or non-existent entities like humans. So you need to be clear with abstractions or non-existent entities. So we can't see or we can't find animals to be referring to abstractions. Now, what do you mean by abstractions? What's the idea? Yes, abstractions means the things which do not have physical existence. Physically, I mean the intangible things. Now in English, we have abstract nouns. So abstract nouns are the nouns that we use to refer to intangible things. Intangible means the things which do not have any physical presence, things which we can't see, we can't touch, we can't smell, we can't feel, intangible. So the nouns like poverty, kindness, happiness, right? These are abstract nouns. So abstractions means the things which do not have any physical entity, physical existence. So, or non-existent entities. Non-existence means the things that never exist. So animals, they do not use language to refer to any of these things, to refer to abstractions or even to non-existent entities. The example for non-existent entities like what? If you are interested, you can just think of some examples for non-existent entities, the things that are really not existing in this world, but we human beings are talking. Do you know anything like that? The things which humans, which we normally talk, we can talk, but they are not really there in the world. Any example for non-existent entities, things? No idea. Now, what about this, the dragon? There are so many things anyway, right? Now, have you seen dragons in your real life?
No.
No, they may be there on TV series or YouTube or whatever, but in really, no dragons. And what about mermaids? Are they there? Mermaids? I have a doubt anyway, right? So that is also a fabricated thing, mermaids. And the fairies, they are not existing in this world now. And what about this Superman, that kind of men, of course, they are in the movies only, but not in the real world. Okay, so but still the human beings can talk about them. But can you find animals to be talking about that kind of non-existing things? Never. So they never use language to refer to the things that are not existing, as well as the things that do not have any physical existence, right? That's one point. And also using language to reflect about language itself, right? So we don't find animals to be using language or whatever communication system to talk about their communication system. So we identify this feature like using language to talk about or reflect about language as metalinguistic. Metalinguistically means using language to talk about language. Now, what do we do now? What am I doing now? I am using language metalinguistically. That means at the moment, I am using English language to talk about language, to talk about the nature of language. So that can be done by the human beings, but not by the animals. We can never ever expect them to be talking about their communication systems. They use a kind of communication system to get their works done, get their needs done. That's all. Other than that, they never worry about how to use signals. But we human beings do it. Metalinguistically means that. So this feature is also not available in animal communication systems. So are you clear with these two features? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, so we have come to the end of the first area, right? And then we are going to first area means the first part. The nature of grammar is our next area to be discussed. And I think as I have put into the timetable I have received, we are working tomorrow also. Maybe, probably. Okay. So never mind. We have some more time today. So we'll have an introduction to this section, right? And we'll see what we are going to talk about the grammar, the nature of grammar in this section, and so that in the next day we can continue. Okay, so far, are you clear? I mean, I'm not asking from you all whether you remember anything I have been talking. That is not possible. But if you have felt comfortable or in understanding or in just listening and taking these things to your mind, so that would be better. But you have the module to study the stuff for your assessments, right? Okay. Well, so we'll move on to the next area and we'll have a slight look at that. The nature of grammar. Actually, so far we have been talking about the nature of language, right? And here there's a part on the nature of grammar, and there, of course, we are talking about the definitions of grammar and the fallacies concerning grammar. It's not a lengthy area, okay? Not a lengthy area, only two areas, sub-areas are there. So we'll have a look at the definitions of grammar now. Actually, I'm not going to talk about the, now see how short. So I'm not going to take several different definitions and talk about or explain line by line, not that, okay? I want you to pay your attention to the word grammar, right? And how the word grammar is used in language, because you know grammar and language are inseparable, right? We can't actually talk about language without talking anything about grammar, no? And just a few minutes ago we have been talking about the rule governed nature of language. Rule governed nature means the language is governed by grammatical rules in each and every level. So therefore, grammar is very much important aspect in language. So grammar can exist or grammar can be presented in several different ways in a language. As you can see on screen here, we can refer to the internalized grammar, descriptive grammar, prescriptive grammar, etc. So grammar can appear in so many different ways. So we'll just have a small look at this before we wind the discussion today. Okay. So grammar means what then? In common, the common term, the common word is grammar. It refers to the rules or principles by which a language works. That is its system or structure. So grammar means simply the rules or principles by which a language works, right? So we have this internalized grammar. Earlier we found this when we were talking about competence. So internalized grammar is actually what we mean by competence here. That means what the person has taken in his mind, has taken to his mind, of course, regarding the language. That means the grammatical knowledge, the data, the facts that have been internalized in the mind of a speaker of a language. This is internalized grammar. In one word, we have competence. Okay, and we have descriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar. Now there's a clear difference between descriptive grammar and prescriptive grammar. Just like competence versus performance earlier, here you can draw a parallel between, of course, not parallel, you can contrast descriptive grammar and prescriptive grammar, these two terms. So you need to understand descriptive grammar clearly. What's that? In other words, we have constitutive rules. For descriptive grammar, that means formation of the speaker's grammar in a set of rules. Formulation of the speaker's grammar in a set of rules. So in any language, we have a descriptive set of grammar rules. Maybe documented or recorded, okay, in writing, the descriptive set of grammar. So actually descriptive grammar means kind of set of grammatical rules. Especially thinking about the formulation, right? Formulation of the particular set of grammatical rules. Whereas prescriptive grammar talks about establishing and maintaining a standard of correctness. Now, this is the key word. You can understand the point, this prescriptive grammar with this word. Correctness in the language. To prescribe and proscribe certain ways of speaking. Now, prescribing means telling this is correct. You should do this. Recommending. Okay, now this is the grammar rule. You should put, for example, you should put the verb according to the subject-verb agreement rule. So that is prescribing a grammatical rule. Dictating that it is correct, recommending. As well as proscribe means telling that the things you should not do, forbidding certain ways of speaking or maybe writing in using grammar. Right? You should not do this. For example, in pronunciation, we can take it like, okay, when you pronounce a consonant cluster, don't use the sound E, the vowel sound E at the beginning. Now, in Srilankan English pronunciation, you may have heard it, right? The people are telling is school, but the correct pronunciation should be school, not is school, but people, some people, not everybody, right? You may have heard telling is school, is stat, I have done is stat, is sky, like adding extra E sound. So what should we say then? In prescriptive grammar, we can say you should not use E the vowel E in front of a consonant cluster in pronunciation. So you are forbidding not to do it. Okay, so prescriptive grammar talks about the correctness of the language. It seeks the correctness. It establishes the standard of correctness in the language. This is correct, you should do this, and this is incorrect, you should not do this. Likewise, prescribing, right? Prescriptive. But this is different from descriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar doesn't talk anything about, okay, you should do this or you should not do that. Nothing like that. It simply gives you a set of rules. Set of rules. Right? That's the difference between descriptive grammar and prescriptive grammar, and we'll follow the idea, the same idea in our next session actually, right? Because now I don't think I have enough time. I can finish talking about descriptive and prescriptive grammar within few minutes like this. So we'll continue from this point onwards in the next day, probably maybe tomorrow or in the next day. In the next session, we'll continue from grammar slide onwards. Okay, now until then, in your leisure time, I hope that you would go through the module and refresh your understanding and minds and come to the lecture. Okay then, right, so you all have had a nice time. Very boring.
No, ma'am.
That's
No.
really good.
It
Anyway,
was nice, ma'am.
the thing is, better have some time from your leisure time just to go through the module and come to the lecture. Then it will be much more meaningful for you. Okay, if you have a look at the module and come. All right, then. So we'll meet in the next day. And good night, all of you.
Thank you,
Good
ma'am.
night, Meet. Miss, can I get one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, I couldn't find this the presentation with me. So
The
can
thing
I
is,
check
no,
it with the bigger
Tarani.
classroom?
No, Tarani, I have not sent these slides because the thing is,
Okay.
I have prepared all these slides, taking the facts from the module actually. So there's nothing new in the slides. Only thing is, when I am discussing the things, the things new or additional informations can come apart from what is there in the module. Otherwise, I have typed everything which you can see in the module only, right? Nothing new in the slides.
Okay, ma'am. Right.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, ma'am.
Okay then, right. So good night,
Thank
all
you,
of
ma'am.
you.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.